Hello, friends. Recently, I watched a wonderful movie in Italian about an Italian saint, Padre Pio. Some of you may have seen that movie. It's quite inspiring. It's long, over 3 hours, but very powerful, very moving. What struck me, one of many things that struck me, is that there are 3 ways to say the word you. When a person is addressing another person, there are 3 different ways, 3 different kind of levels of familiarity or formality, depending on which way you look at it. And in English, we just have the word you. Whether you're addressing your child, whether you're addressing your friend, whether you're addressing someone in the grocery store that you've never met before, whether you're addressing, the king, the pope, the president, the saint, the master, we have no differentiation of formality. In Italian, there is the familiar. This is more or less the same in Spanish, tu, in Italian and Spanish. And that's what you say to someone you're very close to, your own child, your own family member, someone that you're very connected with, your close friend, someone you're familiar with and very comfortable with. In English, we would say you're on a first name basis. You're talking to each other by first names. Then there's a slightly more polite, formal way of saying you, which is, in Italian it's lei, in Spanish usted, and it's a kind of, I'm addressing you, but I don't know you, and therefore I'm being formal and polite and acknowledging that. And finally, there's a 3rd level, which is much, much less commonly used in the personal, in the individual speaking to another individual. But in Italian, it's vostro, voi. And it means you all. It's actually you're sort of addressing a group of people. And it's the same in Spanish, vosotros, but in Spanish, I think its use is depends on where you are, and I'll go no further with the Spanish part because it's been many years since I studied Spanish, and it's not I got much more familiar and to a degree fluent in Italian when I lived there. But that 3rd level is the level where you are addressing royalty or someone in a very formal way, in a very respectful way. And it's just interesting. And so watching this movie, there were times when people would address Padre Pio using that language, that most formal language, as if they knew they were addressing a saint, and they were not just on their best behavior, but really deeply respectful, the way that a disciple would address the guru. And yet, in the disciple-guru relationship, there can be deep familiarity and at the same time deep respect. It's a very interesting dynamic there. But I say all this because in a certain way, we lose a little something in English when we don't have that, we just simply say you, could you help me? Please, would you, whatever. And there isn't the acknowledgement of this is my expectation or this is my understanding of where we are, where I am in relation to you. This is how I relate to you. You address someone that you don't know in a polite, formal way. Chances are they respond in a polite, formal way back to you. We don't have that. We have to do it with body language. We have to do it in other ways. And it's just interesting, you, and you, three different flavors of the word, and yet they contain nuance. And it's interesting, just referring back to when I lived in Italy and when I was speaking it much more regularly, that there's a little kind of negotiation that happens. Sometimes it happens very distinctly, and other times it's sort of happens without anyone overtly acknowledging it. But there's a moment where a connection with someone goes from the more formal or polite to the more familiar, because now they're getting to know each other. And why don't we address each other more familiarly? It just feels more friendly and more close. But when you don't have that connection with someone, it's a little bit of a presumption in a way to use that, and it can even be a little bit offensive to someone. It's like, why do we know each other? Why are you addressing me that way? And so it's just helpful in our lives to also recognize that the people around us are not all equally familiar to us. They're not all on the same level. We have this phrase, all men, all people are created equal. Well, they are in the cosmic sense, but in the human sense, people occupy all points along the spectrum in terms of age, in terms of experience, in terms of authority or responsibility, and some acknowledgement of that is appropriate. And English kind of does away with that a little bit intentionally, I have to think. It's particularly American English, because here we are in a country where there are no titles, there are no Lord this and Lady that and Duchess and Duke and Baron and et cetera, et cetera. We don't have those titles, and yet we've sort of replaced it with, so-and-so, Reverend so-and-so, or Dr. so-and-so, or so-and-so CEO of Tum-Ti-Tum. Those levels of it is kind of where we've placed that. And I say that because it's helpful for us to recognize that different people have different life experience. And if we want to harmoniously relate to them, draw from them, then it's helpful to find a way to acknowledge that, even if it's just inwardly. We can't change the English language overnight. We're still going to say you, because that's the word we have to say. But inwardly, it's helpful to acknowledge the connection that we have, or that's growing and developing in ourselves, so that we can relate. Ultimately, we want to relate to people as souls. And in a sense, ultimately, we want to relate to all people, with the deepest respect. But in day-to-day life, we also still have to work with human beings as they are. But always, I'll just close by saying, always with respect. Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda, the vision of Yogananda that he shared with us, among, of course, many, but he focused on that quality many times in speaking of Yogananda, that Yogananda was the most respectful person that he ever knew. And you would think, Yogananda is this guru, this master. Not that he referred to himself that way publicly, but nevertheless, he had that inward mastery, and that gave him ultimate respect for everyone. It's a helpful thing to remember, an important thing to remember, because it's so easy to be disrespectful, sometimes even unintentionally, but just kind of ignorantly not respectful of the divine nature of each soul. And it's very, very important for all of us. Namaste.